Shalom and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic, which is going to be the issue of Pesach. I don't know why so many people are caught up in this false belief that Passover can't be kept by Gentiles. But this is not true. It's not actually what the Torah says. And I'm going to actually focus upon the very fact of the problem of what people are getting caught up when they think of this, okay? I've met many people and stuff where this is what they believe. They actually think they couldn't even celebrate the Passover until they were circumcised. And this is not true. Matter of fact, if you're a Gentile out there and you believe Mashiach Yehoshua, you're required to keep Passover. And I'm going to explain the problems that are occurring with people who don't know what their Bible really says, because they're misquoting things and taking things way outside of context. So the issue that is going to be focused upon is basically it's going to be focused on Bereshit Yud Bet, which is Exodus chapter 12, and the main focal point that's going to be hit upon is the issue that deals with the qualifications for the celebration of Pesach. And this is the problem that people get caught up on when they read the English and they don't really understand what it's saying, because English is one of those things you have to understand. It's just very clouded, okay? When you're dealing with translation, you're dealing with a very clouded way of thinking, because what does this word mean? You know, like you hear the word burden, and what does this word mean? Does it mean something that's burdensome? Because that's what I think when I think of the word burden, and that's exactly why you need people to know Hebrew to help you understand the Bible, and you need to go to Jews and ask them, because they're the best ones that will help you understand what these words are saying. I'm not saying just you can't research this. You obviously can if you want to research and understand certain parts of the scriptures and stuff, absolutely. But to really understand the context of a problem, let me share with you something here, okay? So this is in Shemot, this is in Yud Bet, and I'm going to read Mem Gimel, and I'm going to read all of it, probably down to Mem Hey, which is 43 to 45, and it says, V'emei Adonai el Moshe, and the Lord said unto Moshe, Va'aharon, and to Aaron, Zot chuchat Pesach, this is the statute of the Pesach. Kol ben necher, everyone who is the son of a stranger. This is a ben necher, is someone who's not of the tribes of Israel. They're somebody who is from a foreign country, a foreign land, a foreign people. Okay, the word necher in Hebrew literally means to be strange and foreign, and so therefore that's why it's called the nechers, because they're considered, anybody who's not following the stance and the belief of what Israel is doing is considered really strange, because there's only one God, there's only one stance, there's only one place of how we're supposed to act and function. And so all the nations, you know, they're not considered anything but strange, because they're following an opposite version. And so the Torah says, Lo yichal bo, he should not eat at it. So a Gentile, he cannot eat the Passover. Okay, now focus on this. He didn't say he can't keep it. He says he can't eat. You see, there's two different problems here, okay? You can keep Passover, but not eat the Pesach. And this is the issue a lot of people get caught up on, is the fact of they're thinking, well, if you don't, eat the Passover, you're not keeping Passover. That's not true, okay? Because the commandment for Pesach was only required upon Am Yisrael. And so therefore, that's why it goes to say, V'kol eved ish miknat kesef, and every servant who has been purchased with money, malta oto, you shall circumcise him, as yochal bo, then he shall eat it. Well, that means he's someone who's been a servant, who's owned by a Jew, that when he's circumcised, then the servant's allowed to eat it. And he's allowed to partake of exactly the same thing his master's partaking of. Now, when it goes to say, Toshav v'shachir, a Toshav v'shachir lo yuchal bo, he should not eat at it. The Toshav is talking about what's called the Ger Toshav. It's a person who dwells in the land of Eretz Israel, and is permanent there, but he doesn't want to at all be a part of the covenant. He's satisfied with keeping the commandments of God. He's satisfied with doing what God commands, but he doesn't want to be part of the covenant. V'shechir lo yichal, and the hired labor. So the hired labor, these are people that are brought in from other countries to work and help inside Eretz Israel. And the Torah says that they're not allowed to eat of the actual Pesach. And this just tells you the prohibition of what it is they're not allowed to do. It doesn't say they can't have matzah, they can't have bitter herbs, they can't sit down and have the festive meal. It just says they can't eat of the Pesach. And it says, B'bayit echad yechalo, and in one house he shall eat it, v'lo tetzei mi habayit, he should not go forth out from it. Min habasar hutza, from the flesh outside, ve'etzim, and the bones, lo tishbarubo, you shall not break at it. So it should not break inside the actual Pesach, the actual Pesach lamb. No one of the bones can be broken. And kol edat Yisrael yaseh oto, and all of the congregation of Israel, they shall make it. And making it is talking about the obligation of making the Pesach Seder. This is specifically referring to the Pesach lamb. Okay? Now when it says, V'ki yagor itecha ger, and when there was sojourn with you, a ger, va'asa Pesach, and he will make Pesach. Now, this is where you have the problem, your translation. If you reading it, perform Passover, you're thinking that you cannot perform Passover unless you're circumcised. That's not what the Hebrew is saying here, okay? The Bible actually says here, it says, Va'asa Pasach, and he makes the Pesach. So he's making the Pesach is referring to the actual, he wants to be a part of the actual eating of the Passover lamb. He wants to be a part of the offering of the Passover lamb. This is what this is referring to. And he says, V'kol arel lo yichal bo, and anyone who is uncircumcised, he should not eat at it. So notice, the key phrase is eat at it. The Torah is telling us that the actual ger is forbidden because he's not allowed to eat the Pesach unless, and this is what we're going to find here, unless he becomes circumcised. Actually, I skipped the line. So it says, V'asa Pesach, he shall make the Pesach. This is La'aronai, to the Lord. Himulo, circumcise for him, kol zachar, every male. Az yikarav la'asoto, then he will draw near to perform it. Vayak ezrach ha'aretz, then he'll be like the ezrach ha'aretz, the native of the land. So the Torah says, only upon the point in which the person, when he becomes circumcised and enters the covenant with Israel, that when he enters the covenant with Israel, that he is allowed to become a part of the Pesach celebration in which he can eat of the lamb. If not, he would celebrate Pesach differently. He would not be required to perform a sacrifice. He would not be allowed to perform the sacrifice, and he would not be allowed to actually partake of the actual Pesach itself. And so, from this very point, we find that from the Torah itself, what it teaches is the Torah is actually saying to us is that the ger is someone who he's dwelling with Israel. He's a part of all of the commandments except the Mosaic covenant. He's not part of the covenant of Moshe, and the covenant of Moshe is what is the connective thing that brings both the ger and Am Yisrael completely together, because once the ger becomes circumcised because he wants to be part of it, the Torah says then he can eat at it. But if he doesn't become circumcised, the Torah says, Kol arel, and every uncircumcised male, lo yichal bo, should not eat at it. And this goes to show the fact there is a separation between both Jew and Gentile, and that separation is the obligation. The obligation of, if you're a Gentile and you want to keep Passover, well, you can keep Passover up to an extent, and that is, you can do everything except the sacrifice of the lamb, the eating of the lamb, and the partaking of the lamb. Now, when it comes to the issue of the ger, if the ger says, well, I want to. I want to be a part of this. Then the Bible says he has to go through what's called a conversion. And that conversion is the process by which he goes from no longer being a ger to now he becomes a different status by which he's no longer a goy like he was before, where now he's a ger in a whole different manner. And this ger in a whole different manner is the ger by which is a part of all of the mitzvot. So he keeps all of the temple ritual issues that require him to go to the temple. So if his wife becomes a Zav Gadol, his wife would go to the temple and offer the sacrifice for becoming a Zav. If his wife gave birth, his wife would go to the temple after being purified, and she would offer the sacrifice for the fact of giving birth. But if not, the Torah says, then if he does not become a part of the covenant, then because he doesn't become part of the covenant, that separation is merely the separation of his service, having any connection service to the temple, because the temple service is off limits for all the goyim, and it's by penalty of death, as the Torah says. And many people, of course, they sit there and say, well, I become the part of the covenant through Mashiach Yehoshua, and therefore, I can do this. And that's not true. Mashiach Yehoshua does covenant. It does not bring you into the covenant of Moshe. Mashiach Yehoshua is the covenant of salvation, which means he's the covenant which gives us eternal life. That's for Jew and Gentile. We both, by faith, have salvation through Mashiach Yehoshua. But through Mashiach Yehoshua, you do not enter into the covenant of Moshe, because it's a completely separate and different covenant. That's why there was the whole issue in the Brit Chadashah, the teaching that the Brit Chadashah covenant doesn't surpass or take away the Torah covenant that God gave to Moshe. And so therefore we have to understand the fact of, if you're going to become a part of the covenant of Moshe, well then you become a part physically of Am Yisrael, and therefore you go through the conversion by which you have to be circumcised and immersed, and it has to be done by which the Jews who are watching over you and seeing that your conversion is true and sincere, that you become a part of the body of Israel. So for people out there who say, well, I just want to know what I need to do so I can function. Well, Pesach is very important. You need to know how to keep Passover properly. And you need to know that you can keep Passover. Matter of fact, from the time period of the temple's destruction all the way until today, every Jew and Gentile keeps Passover the same. It's only when the temple's standing that the Pesach changes, the whole dynamics of it changes. Because no longer are we under the situation by which we didn't have a temple. Now, if the temple was standing, we'd have to bring sacrifices, we'd have to bring offerings, and all these things would have to exist, by which requires us to function inside the temple. And of course the goyim would be forbidden from entering, and the goyim would be forbidden from partaking of the Pesach, unless, and this is a key phrase, unless he wants to. By which, once he voluntarily says, I want to, this is my desire, it's what I want, and he sees that his hope is in Mashiach Yehoshua. It's not in Judaism, it's not in becoming a convert, it's not like his identity is being a convert and that's what's going to make him feel better and everything. It's just other commandments, as even Paul says. They're just added laws, that's all they are. And so we just need to understand the fact that if you're celebrating Pesach today, you don't have to be circumcised unless you're a Jew or a convert. That's it. If you're not a Jew or a convert, you're not required to become circumcised. This is a big problem, because a lot of people, what they get caught up in is they think, well, what do you mean I don't have to be circumcised? Circumcision was specifically a covenant God made with Abraham and his descendants. If you read the Torah and go back in Bereshit, you'll find that circumcision was only required upon Abraham and his descendants. It was not required upon anybody in the world. Matter of fact, Abraham, because of the joy and the mitzvot and understanding what God has given him, he desired greatly to find other people who would want to be a part of the covenant with him. But it didn't mean that he went around there telling everybody, hey, you're sinning, and if you don't circumcise your skin, you're not going to be a follower of God. It wasn't true. Abraham knew that having the covenant for himself, that having the covenant himself, made it that he was set apart and different, and made it that knowing that his children were going to be set apart and different and used by God in a special way. So There is no requirement in the Torah whatsoever, and there's no requirement in the Brit Chadashah that a Gentile become circumcised. If you want to become circumcised, if this is your desire, you have every freedom of right to want and do so. Go to the Jews, tell them I want to be circumcised, I want to be part of the covenant, and they'll bring you in. You just have to be shown sincerity. You just got to show the fact that, that you are what you mean. And just like, Ruth, she says, Naomi, what are you talking about? You crazy? I'm not going to sit here and stay by myself and leave you as you go off back to Israel. Your people's my people. Your God's my God. I want to leave. I want to go with you. And that's the point. So I want to encourage you, if you're out there and you're trying to understand, is it really true that this is how it works and stuff? Well, let me help you understand the truth and reality of it and stuff, because it's not true. If you're wanting to keep Pesach and stuff, you have to understand that, Pesach specifically is just the celebration of our coming out of Egypt. And since you believe Mashiach Yehoshua, you have been brought out of Egypt. Egypt is under the servitude of Satan. It's under the servitude and bondage of the wicked one, who has enslaved us through lies and deceit and everything in order to try to keep us in bondage. And through Mashiach Yehoshua, we've been set free. And this is the point where I want to encourage you out there who want to partake of Pesach and stuff. But be warned and understand this and stuff. You cannot slaughter the Passover in any way, shape, and form outside of the temple. The Torah forbids this, and anybody who does this is violating the Torah and doing idol worship and basically doing demon worship if they do this. So Passover, you just have matzah, you have the bitter herbs, and of course, you can learn the rest as you learn more about Pesach. So I want to encourage you, and I want to encourage you out there who want to understand, do I really have to be circumcised in order to celebrate Pesach? And the answer is no. But if you want to be a part of the actual Passover lamb, which none of us can be right now because we don't have a temple, you would have to be circumcised. So hopefully this brings some rest to your heart, and you can actually start looking at the scriptures a lot better and be happy knowing the fact that the Bible actually doesn't command you to become circumcised, but it also doesn't forbid you either. I'll see you next time.